Dansin etute magtiarwili nisigasun o pasqueacuche. Tawau, welcome to APTN National News. Political tensions are high in the Mohawk community of Kanesatake over allegations of misspent federal funds, but an investigation launched by the most recent Grand Chief has now been dropped. Our reporter Savannah Craig takes us to Kanesatake to show us the latest developments.
It's been 4 years now that investigation's been going on.
Former Kanesatake Grand Chief Victor Ballantyne alleges that chiefs in power before him misspent COVID-19 relief funds. He took this to the provincial police force, the Sûreté du Québec, in 2021.
I have yet to hear from the federal government on what they think about their money being spent.
Ballantyne even flagged the issue to then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Assembly of First Nations last year. These charges have now been dropped by the Sûreté du Québec.
It's just another, another black eye to Kanesatake when it comes to the injustice that the federal government and the province has shown to us.
Ballantyne told APTN News the Sûreté's investigator told him the charges were dropped earlier this month. The SQ told APTN News back in April that there had been an ongoing fraud investigation in Kanesatake. However, that investigation was not against the Band Council, but an external agency in Kanesatake.
It was disappointing news that they told us that there was not enough evidence to move forward with charges on anybody, basically due to the fact of Indigenous Services Canada, or ISC, and their policies.
APTN News once again reached out to the SQ. They referred APTN News to the Office of the Director of Criminal and Penal Prosecutions. In an emailed response, Deputy Spokesperson Patricia Johnson said after analyzing the evidence, it was decided to not lay criminal charges.
I'm looking forward to maybe some more peaceful times after this whole mess is over.
Serge Simon was Grand Chief during the time Ballantyne alleges the misspending occurred. Simon says those on council worked hard to protect the community during COVID-19.
They went above and beyond, and they were crucified for it. So I kind of go between the anger I feel about it and the pride that I have that what we accomplished led to us having the lowest per capita death rate than any First Nation in Quebec.
Ballantyne's issue with the former Band Council includes large payments to council members under the Emergency Response Unit, or ERU. Unaudited financial records for the 2020 fiscal year appear to show that Councillor Patricia Mayer received close to $500,000.
Under Labour law, after a certain time, you get time and a half, and if you work, in which they did, during holidays, it was double time. And the hours that they worked, I don't think at the beginning of this anybody had any idea how much work is going to be involved, for how long. You know, a global pandemic could last months or years. And since we have no police force, we have no fire station, the ERU had to fill in some of those roles to a certain point.
Ballantyne is still looking for accountability over the ERU spending, and he wants to take the case to the federal government.
After all, it is federal monies that were sent here, over $5 million. Right now, in my capacity, I can't really do much. I'm waiting for an election.
Ballantyne says he will run again as Grand Chief in the next election. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kanesatake, Mohawk Territory.
Kanesatake in Savannah. More information now on the man Winnipeg police allege is behind 22 arsons in the city within the span of 6 months. Police say they aren't closing the chapter on the case yet as they discover more details in their ongoing investigation. Sam Jones gives us this report.
One man has been arrested following an investigation into several instances of arson and property damage across central Winnipeg since June. Jesse Wheatland faces 22 criminal charges, including 13 counts of arson causing damage to property, arson with disregard for human life, and multiple break-and-enter offenses.
We feel this is going to give the community a sense of a relief from probably what they've been feeling and experiencing through the summer.
Winnipeg police say the 35-year-old is believed to have acted alone in 22 arsons. 11 locations were damaged, including restaurants, nightclubs, and other buildings. Police are connecting Wheatland to the recent fires at the constituency offices for provincial cabinet ministers Nahanni Fontaine and Bernadette Smith.
The last months have been very uncertain. And in some respects, it has left us feeling a little bit scared and frightened sometimes.
Wheatland appears to be a constituent of Smith's Point Douglas neighborhood, where he was arrested Tuesday on Magnus Avenue shortly after a fire broke out at an addictions treatment center nearby. He has since been connected to that fire. Over the past year, Wheatland shared multiple posts to Facebook groups for the Point Douglas neighborhood. Many of them express opposition to a proposed supervised consumption site, part of Smith's portfolio as addictions minister. Police say they have insight into Wheatland's motives, but could not share them because the investigation is ongoing.
We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work with Manitoba Justice, securing judicial authorizations. There's a lot of evidence still to obtain and work through. So I'm not going to bookend it saying that that this is the end of it, but this is what we know right now.
WPS have confirmed to APTN News that they've connected Wheatland to Sunday's vandalism at the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs building on Portage Avenue. The charges have yet to be proven, and the case is expected to appear in court Tuesday, November 25th. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Tapwagi Sav. Nunavut's territorial government and its leadership have just been sworn in. This took place today during the first sitting of the 7th Legislative Assembly of Nunavut. The day started with a prayer and national anthem. The swearing was led by Commissioner of Nunavut, Eva Kamaknak. All members elected in October were sworn in as MLAs for their ridings. They had a choice between swearing on a religious text like the Bible or making a solemn affirmation without religious connotation. 21 MLAs were sworn in. The seat for Agu is empty. There was a tie there, so another election is needed. After the swearing in, Commissioner Kamaknak called for the swearing in of the Premier, Speaker, and Cabinet.
I congratulate each and every one of you on your accomplishments and wish you well in your important work on behalf of our territory and the people that live in it.
By virtue of authority of my office, I hereby summon the 7th Legislative Assembly of Nunavut to meet for the transaction of business at the hour 1:30 in the afternoon of Thursday, the 20th November 2025.
We'll have more on that on tomorrow's APTN National News. This summer, wildfires tore through several northern Saskatchewan communities, including Denair Beach, just 22 kilometers west of the town of Flin Flon on the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border. Now, new homes are being rebuilt in the community for those who lost their residence. Denair Beach is part of Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. 24 homes are being built in Prince Albert to be moved north, with 21 nearing completion and 2 are already finished. The first 2 homes are expected to be transported by the end of next week, with the rest arriving by February. The Chief and Council thank the displaced band members for their patience and say they hope everyone will be happy with their new homes. 2 Dene First Nations in the Northwest Territories are taking matters into their own hands in a new pilot program aimed at keeping drugs, alcohol, and dangerous goods out of their communities. Charlotte Morit-Jacobs brings us that story.
When these planes touch down in the Saskatchewan Northwest Territories, they'll be free of drugs, alcohol, and dangerous goods. Peace of mind for Joseph Toback.
To us, every seizure is a potential life saved. Loss of community members, mothers, fathers, sons who just aren't here.
Toback is one of several leaders spearheading a pilot project that sees dogs search luggage and cargo on airplanes leaving Yellowknife and arriving in the isolated communities of Fort Good Hope and Delaney.
We've collaborated and at the direction of the Assembly, given all the concern and the issues around this substance making its way into the communities, we wanted to act, and I think this was like the first step that we found that would be impactful.
Back in May, the Dene Nation held a 2-day forum to discuss the urgent need for community protection and security.
We have challenges with security at some of the small airports.
Discussions on how to tackle the issue of drugs and violence, investing in prevention. Mark Hicks is the guy to call. He worked as an RCMP member for 32 years before running his own crime detection canine business for the last 15.
I work for several Indigenous communities, not just one or two. It takes a while to have them buy into it, but once they see the effect that it's had, we're seeing a huge drop in numbers from spousal assaults and domestic abuse. And we hope that translates into violent crime or sexual assaults or any crime. But we have an opportunity here from this perspective to have a huge effect on the way that things have been done here in the past, change them good for the future.
The RCMP are bound by legal and constitutional constraints, such as requiring reasonable cause before conducting a search without a warrant. But Hicker says it's about education over enforcement, and First Nations having the autonomy to decide how to handle crime. When his team finds dangerous goods and substances, they relay the message to the airline, who in turn lets the community know. The 500-person Kasho-Gotene Dene and Métis community of Fort Good Hope isn't alone. The Dene-Gotene government has also been using the same canine service since November 10th to keep its 600-person Dene and Métis community safe. Leadership from the DGG were away and unable to comment by airtime, but in a media statement say, this is being done from a health and safety perspective. Freight searches are also being conducted with other airlines from Yellowknife to those two communities. But the momentum can't end here. That's the message Chief of Fort Good Hope, Sean Granjam, says he wants the territorial government to hear.
Upcoming winter, it's going to be opening up there too. So it's getting kind of scary because we're getting a little bit nervous because a lot of people probably owe money. And all the drug collectors and stuff are going to be coming up, and it's going to be on the winter.
Chief Granjam says the program is costing the First Nation over $40,000 a month, so they will be appealing to the territorial and federal government this winter for support. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Kanesatake in Charlotte, and our weekly Truth and Politics panel is back to discuss status and the Indian Act. Hear more after the break. Cheskwa. Come on in, Pete DeGue. A Senate committee's vote to end what's known as the second generation cutoff and implement a one-parent rule is being welcomed by longtime advocates and First Nations organizations across Canada. Amendments passed by the committee to the federal government's Bill S2 would allow anyone with status under the Indian Act to pass their legal identity and rights onto their children. Despite the optimism, there is still a long way to go before the discriminatory cutoff practice comes to an end. Our Truth and Politics panel is here to discuss. Jennifer Leowitz is the CEO of Pasqua Strategies, and Egon Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks to you both for being here. Egon, let's start with you. Can you give us a little background on what Bill S2 is and what it hopes to accomplish?
So Bill S2 attempts to deal with a number of issues involving long disenfranchisement of Indigenous peoples from having what's called status, or often understood to be treaty or Indigenous rights as a status Indian. And what S2 seeks to do is to deal with many of the ways in which Indigenous peoples have been disenfranchised. And one of those ways is a constant sort of dwindling process in which Indigenous peoples have had non-Indigenous people become our parents, or people who have entered relationships with non-Indigenous peoples. And then as a result, people go from being what's called 6-1 under the Section 6 of the Indian Act, the membership code, or as a member, a status person, and then you become a 6-2, which is often considered kind of a half, or having one status Indian parent. If you have another non-status Indian parent, then you cease to become a member of a status Indian. And so therefore, you can become a member of a First Nation. That's a little bit different. People have membership codes that allow for different things, but you don't receive the benefits of or the responsibilities of the federal government's recognition of you as a status Indian. And that's really what the controversy is all about, of how do we bring people back into who gets to have jurisdiction and then who gets to be recognized, who are the ultimate sayers, and who gets to be a status Indian in this country.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I guess, what's your take on Bill S2 and what it could mean for First Nations people, and does it go far enough?
My feelings are kind of mixed on this, because on one side, I'm like, it's about time that we start, addressing more of the systemic and very oppressive and discriminatory policies that exist within the Indian Act. And so it's kind of bittersweet that you see, senators having these discussions in committee level saying, this was very oppressive. We actually need to correct this course of action. But then on the other side, it's like, wow, the federal government is still deciding and taking it upon themselves to decide who belongs to Indigenous identity in this country, which we know as First Nations people that nationhood and kinship belong to our communities, and they belong to our sense of belonging on who decides who is a member of community. But then there's still that overarching, well, if you want to access certain treaty benefits through, NIHB or Jordan's Principle or whatever it is, the federal government still has a chokehold over who is and isn't defined as Indian under the Indian Act.
Mm-hmm. And Nigan, there is a whole lot of things that need to happen before any of these changes could happen. I guess, what needs to happen next?
So, of course, the first thing and most important thing is that First Nations should be consulted on anything that impacts Indigenous communities. And this is where we get into a bit of a complicated maze, labyrinth of understanding how S2 works. So historically what has happened is that, for instance, you have a child, and when you fill out your papers to have them listed with a band as a status Indian, as long as you have at least one status 6-1 Indian parent, then you can choose what First Nations you are a part of. And that First Nation, for the most part, has no say in which you are now a citizen of that First Nation or listed with that First Nation, a member of that First Nation, which is a little bit different than now membership codes have been developed by individual First Nations, which have been able to bring people in different ways. And in fact, some non-Indian status people have been included within the membership of First Nations. So the complicated now part is that why is this process being so controlled, as Jen said, and is chokehold by the federal government? Who then gets to determine what is a First Nations right? And then how does a community be involved in that? So they must be consulted, even for the inclusion of membership, but the imposition and the inclusion, the dealing with any sort of First Nations rights. And then, of course, the bigger question, which is what S2 seeks to deal with, is who ultimately is the person who gets to say how that happens, who will be members, who will get a say in who is the member of what First Nation, and why do we keep having these constant series of, are you a member, are you a status Indian? And it gets very confusing over a long period of time. Even me just explaining it probably confused people.
Yeah, exactly. And then, some of the criticism over the legislation is that there will be more pretendiism, I can't say that properly. And it even gives the feds even more control. Your thoughts on the potential issues with the bill, Jen?
I definitely think you're absolutely correct that it does give the federal government, a little bit more control, because they're just expanding the amount of people that they'll essentially have under the Indian Act. But on the other side of things, I disagree with the sentiment that this is going to create more pretendianism, more so specifically because I think that's people that are misunderstanding what this bill actually is. Restoring people's status under the Indian Act because of discriminatory policies does not open up the floodgates for more people to be pretendians. It's just restoring what was lost by people's ancestors and their grandparents and their great-grandparents. And I think it's really important for people to remember that at the end of the day, status is not your citizenship and it's not your identity. Status is a part of a federal government oppressive legislation under the Indian Act, and that's about it. I think we have to be very, very careful as Indigenous people if we're going to move in the direction of being even more gatekeepy and even more controlling over who we think belongs to community, because it's up to our communities to essentially belong and for people to be a part of community. So I would err on the side of not saying this is going to open the floodgates to pretendians, because that's just reinforcing what the feds were hoping, is that we ourselves would start just weeding each other out.
We're going to have to leave it there, but we'll continue the conversation over on the podcast. Thanks to you both.
Yeah,
We'd like to hear what you think about that panel discussion or any of our stories here or online. Here's how you can reach us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time for a quick break. When we come back, Fraser Needham will give us a preview of what's next on Nation to Nation. Cheskwa. Wow, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Northern Lights are the flavor of the week after an incredible recent cross-country showing. Avery Harder of Winnipeg, hey, I know that guy. He captured this view from his balcony. Thanks for sharing. Send your pictures to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east, St. John's 5 degrees, Charlottetown 8. Happy Valley Goose Bay 2, Kuujjuaq -4. Saguenay 1, Val-d'Or 2. North Bay 3, Peterborough 7. Kapuskasing 0, Sioux Lookout -2. Churchill -4, Puckatawagan -3. Barons River -1, Brandon 2. North Battleford -1, Yorkton also -1. Uranium City is 1 and La Ronge is 0. Moving to the west, Grand Prairie 8 degrees, Peace River 4. Edmonton 5, Red Deer also 5 and Calgary 7. Bella Coola 1, Kamloops 8. Dease Lake -3, Smithers 4. Over to the north, Rock River -11, Dawson also -11. Norman Wells -11, Fort Simpson 3. Tuktoyaktuk -8, Fort McPherson -11. Cambridge Bay -13, Chesterfield -9. Resolute -18, Igloolik -11. I always feel like I'm calling bingo. So next here is Fraser Needham to tell us what's ahead on Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the news, the Carney government got its first budget passed this week with the help of opposition parties. Laurie Idlow is one of 2 NDP MPs who abstained from the vote, and she's here to tell us why. Plans to build the proposed Prince Rupert gas transmission line in British Columbia have been revived. Drew Harris of Lac Yep Firekeepers joins us to talk about why the organization is opposed. And the budget revealed there is $2.8 billion of unspent money for Indigenous off-reserve housing projects. John Gordon of National Indigenous Collaborative Housing, Inc. is here to tell us how this money might be spent. That's all in a few minutes on Nation to Nation.
Tapwegiche Fraser. And that's your APTN National News for this Thursday, November 20th. Happy Family Lounge Day. I'm TR Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. I'll be back here again one more time tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, from all of us at APTN, to all of you, Agase, Gitam, Gekawapamitinanaw.